Hey, what's up? This is Joeski here from New York City. You're listening to the House Culture Podcast.
House culture.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of this season of the House Culture Podcast, hosted as ever by me, the managing editor at House Culture, Matt Rouse. Now, I know you heard the words final episode there, but don't be alarmed. This is the last episode of our fourth season, and we will be back in 2024 with season 5. And even though we're taking a short break, please keep an eye on those feeds. There might be a few special episodes before we get back to releasing regularly. I also want to thank all of you listeners, old and new, who have supported us through 60 episodes of the show. For those newbies, we are House Culture, a collective of house music fans who have come together through their mutual love of the beat to celebrate the spirit of house music. You can find our home on Instagram at houseculturenet, so please join us there if you haven't already. These 60 episodes have been a wild ride so far, so thanks to everyone who has listened and supported us over the past 4.5 years. Has it really been that long? If you haven't listened to all of the episodes yet, our off-season is the perfect time for you to dig through the archives and listen to club culture conversations with legends such as David Morales, Roger Sanchez, Harry Romero, Todd Terry and Chris Lake. We handpick all of our guests to make sure they have fascinating tales to tell, so regardless of their name or profile, get stuck in, as I'm sure you will enjoy listening to their journey through the scene. Speaking of journeys, and things beginning with J, our 60th episode is a sit-down with New York-based DJ, producer and Maya Recordings label owner Joeski, a man that has been part of the scene for over 30 years. We'll hear how an extremely young Joeski first broke into the scene.
I'm 17 and now I'm kind of just messing around. I'm connecting, going out to parties. Basically, one thing led to another. I met someone that I ended up getting my first booking, and fast forward a year, 2 years, I'm playing the main floor at Limelight.
His role as a tastemaker behind the decks.
I've never felt like I was like some kind of fucking rock star. I never felt like that. I just play records and my job is to make you guys lose it, you know? Because I've always been like, my job is to sound good.
How he has become a real student of the scene.
Anything I ever got into, I always wanted to learn everything about it. You know, it's important. For me, it was when I started DJing. I wanted to know everything about Paradise Garage, about Chicago, about Ron Hardy, all these guys that are like, wow, like now I try to find their mixes, you know? Because it's just, you know, that's school 101. That's like history. Know the history of whatever it is you're doing.
And what house culture means to him.
For me, it's just happiness. It's who I am. It's what my life has been. You know what I mean? I can honestly say that my life has been this my whole life. You know what I mean? And I feel so grateful, so much gratitude that it's everything to me. You know what I mean?
I hope you enjoy this one. This is Joeski.
House culture.
Hi Joeski, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the House Culture Podcast today. Thanks for finding the time to sit down with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You're welcome. You've been part of the house music scene for over 30 years, playing all over the world, producing anthems of your own across numerous imprints, and you're also the man behind legendary label Maya Recordings. We will really want to dig into all of that, but first we always like to ask, being born in Brooklyn and raised in Queens, what was your household and neighborhood like, and how did you first discover music there?
Yeah, well, in Brooklyn at that time, this was in the, you know, pretty much in the 70s, mid to late 70s. It was a different, I mean, it was not the New York it is now, you know what I mean? It was grimy. It was kind of it was dangerous, you know what I mean? It was rough neighborhoods, you know? It's funny to see all these neighborhoods now are just completely different, you know what I mean? Like I live in this neighborhood where I live in Bushwick, Brooklyn, was rough. You know what I mean? This was like a war zone. Now it's just like so expensive to live. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I was born in Brooklyn, and then we moved to Queens, Jackson Heights, which is more a predominantly Latin neighborhood in Queens. And I want to say in the early 80s. And, you know, there were rough neighborhoods, let's be realistic. You know what I mean? That one, like in Queens was predominantly Latino neighborhood. And they were rough. But I mean, you know, I feel like I I was just telling my friend this, oppression breeds creativity.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what you find is in these environments, people, the artists move in, right? Because it's a bit rough, it's a bit cheap, there's like a lot going on.
Yeah, like I mean, I've gotten mugged so many times, you know what I mean, growing up as a kid, it's true,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
bicycle robbed so many times, it's just, but it's, I appreciate the neighborhoods now, how they've completely changed, which is great. That's why I still live here. I'm back in Brooklyn, I've been living here since again, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's great that you've kind of continued that. I mean, we've spoken to people like Danny Tenaglia and Todd Terry on the show as well. And, they've always like lent towards how much of like a melting pot like New York was at that time in terms of culture and music and, all the different influences from like Latino and, all of that environment together in one place kind of really kind of gave you a whole worldview.
Like that neighborhood, I mean, pretty much like a lot of neighborhoods, even where I'm at in Brooklyn or in Queens, they're a melting pot. They're just mixed. Like you walk 2 blocks and it's all like Indian.
Hmm.
You walk a few more blocks, it's all like Puerto Rican. It's just like, so you absorb all that just walking down the streets through these neighborhoods. You know what I mean? It's just music and the food and all that. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I've loved about New York, which is I guess why I'm still here because it's so fucking expensive.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially like you said, you're living in this part of the world now that was cheap back in the day, probably, and now it's like,
Those days are over. Yeah, this place is ridiculous, man. It's so expensive here. Just like the cost of living, everything.
mm-hmm,
Like I travel a lot, so I see it. And I travel to all these different states here in this country.
mm-hmm,
And just like small things like, okay, just parking your car at the airport.
mm-hmm.
Some cities here in this country, you could leave your car all day for like $20. Over here, it's 80.
Man, that is something. That is something. That's crazy. And so yeah, obviously you've seen a lot of change over that time, and I'm sure we'll get into that as we're talking through kind of your career and stuff like that. But when you were young and like discovering music and living through that melting pot and all those cultures in the city, what kind of influenced you in terms of taste? Was it your parents? Were you living in a musical household? Was the radio always on? What was
For
going on there?
me, what my like a big part of my inspire like in that is, what I think about when I was younger was my parents were really into music. There was music was constantly playing at the house.
Mm.
And my mom cleaning would have the radio so loud. Like, and it's just that's what I remember like as a kid growing up, my mom cleaning the house,
Wow.
blaring like some of these records that I've sampled now because of that. You know what I mean? Like that Hector Lavoe track that I did,
Hmm.
my mom used to always listen to the original song, and like it was like she loved that record.
Oh
So it
man.
was, I remember like I always find like when I go into the studio, I remember a lot of those times
Mm.
of certain songs that just resonated, you know what I mean, that I sampled now.
Hmm. Hmm. And just rediscovering them, I suppose, in a way, or have they always been part of your life? Have you always listened
Yeah,
to
they
them?
always been. I mean, I've grown up with salsa music. I mean, my family's Colombian, and we grew up basically Colombian, even here in this country. You know what I mean? We barely spoke English in the house,
Hmm.
and it was always salsa music and cumbia music playing. So it's just like I feel like that's a big inspiration. I mean, and the fact that I've gotten to work in Colombia a lot throughout the years has been pretty cool too. It's got like a special place for me because it's like for example, I do these things where I fly to Colombia every year and I work with local musicians
Hmm.
in the studio there and just create because there's so much undiscovered talent out there that, these people just amazing.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
all that comes from the root, it stems from that.
Yeah, and I mean, you can hear that the tinge of that influence throughout your entire career as well. It's something that you've always inputted into all your records and your sound, I found.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah. And so, in terms of you, obviously you're huge in the music scene. What was this always the end game? Did you want to work in music and dance music and
No,
production and all this type of stuff? What was the original
like
out?
my story is this
Mm.
basically. I I'll tell you from the jump, the beginning.
Go.
I was when I was about 13 years old,
Mm.
my sister, I have two sisters, an older and a younger. My older sister, she met this guy that was like obsessed with her. Right? This guy was like, he was a disco DJ, but I mean he was like it was his hobby. He had a job, and that was always his dream to be this DJ. So he had like Techniques 1200, an amazing disco collection, and he was obsessed with my sister. And he figured he's smart. He figured I'm gonna befriend her little brother. So like so she, because she wouldn't pay him. She liked him, but it wasn't like that. They were friends,
Yeah.
but he was obsessed with her. So he befriended me. I remember he told like we met one time that they were hanging out, and he was like, "Hey man, I have turntables and like records. You should come hang out and check it out." And I was like, "All right." I was this little kid, 13 years old. I was like, "All right." And I went over to his house, and I was just blown away. That was when I got bit by the DJ bug.
Yeah.
That was Yeah, I was 13 years old, and I was just like, "Whoa, what is this?" So it's so funny because like now when I think about it in retrospect, like his plan backfired because now I'm banging on his door every day, like, "Hey man, I know you're in there." It was a true story, and I could hear him in there, and he's just probably like, "Damn, must be like a Jehovah Witness or something." They're banging on the door, just hiding, and that started me on this whole path. You know what I
Mm.
mean? So now it was just something I wanted to do constantly.
Yeah.
So I would have the opportunity and mess around on his turntables, and that jump started this. Now, fast forward a few years, I'm 17, and now I'm kind of just messing around. I'm connecting, going out to parties. And even though I wasn't allowed to go out, obviously I was a fake ID. I was going to more gay parties too, because I feel like I wouldn't really get carded so much if you kind of like this young boy walking in. They would just be like, "Come in."
True.
That's kind of how I got started in like going out to clubs and all that.
Yeah.
Basically, one thing led to another. I met someone that I ended up getting my first booking, and fast forward a year, 2 years, I'm playing the main floor at Limelight.
Wow. Wow.
So basically, I've been doing this my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I've had little odd jobs here and there, but this has always kind of been my life
Mm.
from 17 till now.
Wow, that's
So
incredible.
yeah, yeah. So it's been like, I feel so blessed that I was like playing main room at Limelight, 18 years old. I wasn't even allowed to really be in there. You know what I mean? And it was just like in the Roxy, I was 19, 20 when
Hmm.
I was doing the main room there. I'm talking about 3,000 people every Friday.
Yeah, that is insane. That is insane. So, I mean, for it's like how quickly that accelerated, and obviously you're still really, really young. Were you just super confident in your own ability, or was there any kind of?
It was it. This is it. I'm the type of person where like, if I want to do something, I do it to the extreme.
Hmm.
So it was just something like I remember telling my mom, I was like, "Mom, I don't want to go to college. It's just like, this is it. I found who I am." And it was just like, "Oh, but you can't, you need to have something to fall. You don't know if that's gonna work out." I'm like, "No, it's gonna work out. I'm gonna make it work out. I'm not taking, I'm gonna make it happen,
Yeah,
basically."
yeah,
And it's just I've always kind of had that kind of personality where it's just like, if I want something, I'm gonna just make it, do everything in my power to make it happen.
yeah.
So it was a thing where, yeah, I was like, this is it. This is like what I do, and this is who I am, and I'm so glad that it worked out.
Well, I mean, how amazing that you found something that you loved and you're passionate about and you can make a success of from being so young as well. So, and being able
Yeah,
to
and
push
it's
that
it's
forward.
tough though. It's tough for like, I have kids now and my daughter, I always kind of like I know you can't, compare to anybody, but it's just like I'm always like when she's like, "Oh, I don't know what I want to do." I'm like, "Dude, I knew what I was doing at 17."
Yeah, it's like, yeah. What can you do? I've got two young kids as well, so yeah, I feel the vibe in that. I mean, so thinking about like the Limelight and the Roxy, and when you're playing in there, like these are venues that we've heard so much about on this podcast. People talk about what were those clubs like, and what was the crowd like, and what type of music were you playing when you were playing there?
They got me started with that. It was just like different times though.
Uh huh.
No cell phones.
Hmm.
It wasn't like, okay, this is the one thing, I embrace everything that's happening. I mean, I'm glad I'm still, yeah, I'm still able to do this, and I'm still around this generation of kids and everything. It's great.
Hmm.
But I mean, there were just different times, you know what I mean? You had less distractions, it
Yeah.
wasn't like, people weren't on the dance floor just staring at the DJ. It wasn't, I've never felt like I was like some kind of fucking rock star. I never
Yeah.
felt like that. I just play records, and my job is to make you guys lose it.
Hmm.
My
Hmm.
job is not to perform and, make a spectacle on stage. My job is, I've always been like, my job is to sound good. You know what I mean? So it's just like, when all that changed, I mean, I embrace it because I mean, hey, we're still here. I love what I do. I love doing this. But yeah, there was just different times. I felt like people kind of more connected to the music. There wasn't so many distractions. It wasn't kind of like, it was just like people went there to just dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a different now. It's
Yeah.
just, people kind of they want to document everything. They want to remember it. I mean, not that I'm hating on that because I'm not. I just, it's just different times. Yeah, the crowds were big too back then. I remember like the Roxy, man, you got 3,000, 4,000 people throughout the night on a every Friday.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, in terms of the Roxy, I mean, it was the Euro resident at the Together night.
Yeah, the Together Party. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Tom Mello, it's the man. I had to mention his name. He's such a good promoter. He kind of was like pivotal in my growth during that time in the like
Hmm.
mid '90s because he was like the best promoter and he
Yeah.
basically made me his DJ, his resident. So it was just like I got to play with everybody there. I'm like I just kind of coming up, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like playing with Louis, with Danny Tenaglia, Louis Vega, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I've played with everybody there. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Carl Craig,
Yeah.
all the top dogs. I was playing there, and he had this thing where he kind of I have so much like gratitude towards him because he said, "Look, I'm gonna make you're my DJ, and I'm gonna." And he always put me our names same size. There was never like I'm the opener. He did that, and he jump started my career. Big shout out to Tom Mello.
Yeah. That is cool. That is so cool. And, in terms of like residents and having a residency, and you are playing to that crowd that could be coming the same crowd every week, and you've got that real kind of deeper connection with that crowd than what a headliner might have, or
It was
someone who's being
amazing.
booked. Yeah, how did
It
you
was
play off that? Were you like
I was
playing?
I was the closer, so I
Yeah.
was like everybody knew that I closed the night. So that I get goosebumps talking about it because there was some memorable times where I'm just like there was specific records that I would always play and they always knew the crowd would sing. It was amazing.
Oh
You
man.
know what I mean? Just different times.
Uh-huh.
I remember there was just a few records that one of the records I put on the list that
Mm-hmm.
obviously
Yeah.
that I used to close with, and another record I used to close with Oscar, what is it? Merck
Mm-hmm.
together
Mm-hmm.
on Merck
Yep.
Records. Huge, Merck fan
Yeah.
and Oscar G and all those guys and Ralph Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
That was one other record I used to play. I remember the whole crowd used to sing it. It was just the lights would go on, and that was the thing where you turn the lights on. That's kind of the signal. Everybody has to get out.
Mm-hmm.
But they would let us play like two records, and I would see everybody's face. Oh, it's magic, magic. And at that time, that was the best slot, man. That back
Yeah.
then, the
Yeah.
closing. Now things are different. You know what I mean? But the closing slot back then was like people stayed till the end.
Yeah. So what the closing slot, what time would that be? What time of the night
That
or
would
day would
be
that
we would
be?
close like 4 or 5 in the morning, so that
Mm-hmm.
would be like 3 to 5
Mm-hmm.
or 2 to 4:30, depending on how busy the night was. But for the most part, yeah, we went late.
Yeah, yeah. And so,
Yeah,
I mean, so what did that do for your career? Kind of like what kind of year was that? That was like what the 90?
that was mid '90s. That was
Yeah.
like I want to say around 96,
Mm-hmm.
97,
Yeah.
around that time. And all that led to like that was all like that's school for me. All that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like playing there, playing Limelight, playing at Save the Robots.
Yeah.
After hours, I used to do with Kyoki, good friend of mine. He's another one I'm so grateful for because these guys gave me the opportunity. You know what I mean? Kyoki was the shit back then. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? He king of New York in that world, like during the '90s when he was the resident at Disco 2000 at Limelight on Wednesdays,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like the best party back then. And he was the resident, and he let me open up for him a bunch of times. And then he started this after hours called Save the Robots on Thursdays, and he
Mm-hmm.
made me his resident.
Wow.
And that was DJ school for me because I learned so much there.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned long sets
Mm-hmm.
because there were times where, sometimes Kyoki wouldn't make it and I played all night, 12 hours.
Wow. 12 hours.
Oh yeah, 10 hours till they left. You know what I mean? We
Wow.
would start at 3 in the morning
Uh-huh.
and till they left to sometimes 3 in the afternoon.
I mean, that's
And
insane. And we're talking about an era that was on vinyl only, right?
oh,
So,
you don't understand how many crates of record I was lugging. I don't miss that shit, bro. Back problems because lugging records through airports.
yeah.
People are like, how come you don't play vinyl? Like vinyl? I have 20,000 records in the storage right here. How come I don't play vinyl? You know,
Oh man, so I mean,
my whole career.
yeah, so you were like lugging that around. Were you actually taking it to the club or were you having to store it at the
Oh
club?
yeah,
Yeah.
I had friends that would help me lug boxes like for long sets. I always for Save the Robots, I always brought a lot of records because I knew I was going to get a chance to play a longer set.
Hmm.
And yeah, sometimes I bring like two or three of the big boxes. Those things are heavy, almost like
Yeah.
90 pounds each one.
Yeah. I mean, and do you think, like, thinking about just in terms of technology, now we're kind of talking about it a bit, like, do you think playing off of vinyl when you've only got those records to choose from and there's, you're kind of funneled by that compared to USB, you can have hundreds of thousands of
Yeah,
tracks
you
on?
have
Yeah.
everything so much works. Well, just life is just easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can play anything. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I can with a USB stick, I can go play 24 hours if I want. It's crazy.
It is
That's amazing.
nuts.
That's amazing. But it's pros and cons. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Pros is that you have access to all this type of music. You can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Cons is that you kind of just like it's too much. Like you don't even know what you have.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Or, it's hard. I find it so hard to understand what a track is when I'm reading a name of it. It's like it's always for me. It was the color of the label or the sleeve
That's me.
or
Artwork,
yeah,
artwork, 100%.
always
I
the
kind of I
artwork.
didn't do that.
Yeah,
It was always artwork. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so when you're approaching a set and you're playing somewhere like Save the Robots, you've got the potential to either play your set or play all night long. I mean, how do you approach that in terms of how you want to start off and build and tell your story and what you're looking for in the crowd and those types of things?
It depends. Like for me, when I'm gonna go into, I mean, for me, it's always been my favorite to do the longer sets because I
Hmm.
can kind of tell the story and go everywhere. Because I like to play all kinds of stuff. I don't like to just stick one specific sound.
Yeah,
So I kind of like, for me, it depends. Well, at Save the Robots, it was kind of weird because there were times, yeah, I would play 2 to 3 hours, but if Kyoki, didn't show up, I went straight in. But I mean, so I would just kind of start with kind of the records I had
yeah.
for that, and then if he wasn't showing up, then I just kind of go into everything.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a pleasure playing for longer sets because which is great because you can kind of just. I love playing open to close. That's like my shit. Cause see
Yeah.
everybody walking in and the whole development of the floor till they
Hmm.
leave.
Hmm.
Like I have a residency that I've been doing in Montreal for decades at
Yeah,
Stereo.
stereo. Yeah.
Now I'm doing it at Stereo Bar, which is the more like kind of like the earlier room, not the after hours.
Hmm.
And I just played last week, and every time I play there, I play 5 hours. Sometimes, five and a half, and it's just I love it. Open to close, all
Yeah.
night, and I take you everywhere. I just posted a set actually,
I
five
know.
hours.
I saw that today, actually. So yeah, it's on
Listen to
my
the set, you see the whole development. I play everything. I go everywhere.
yeah, it's on my list. It's on your SoundCloud, isn't it? So yeah, I need to check
Yeah,
that out definitely. And yeah, like you say, for me, like when I see a DJ, I love not really knowing what's going to come next, rather than be like, oh, you've only got 1 hour of this person, so you pretty much
they're like
know what you're going to get.
they're playing with their best for that 1 hour, and
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the times it happens, but it's just how it is now.
Mm.
It's just like where you start playing and like half an hour in, you're starting to get into it. You know what I mean? Like 45 minutes in, you're in it.
Uh
And
huh.
then that's record, someone else is going on.
And that's it. That's it. I mean, and how do you work with, when you are, I suppose, from those residency days as well, when you are kind of setting the scene for someone else, perhaps, how would you work with them? What conversations would you be having with them about where you've got to leave it for them, or would you just do your thing?
I feel like that's like DJing 101.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's DJ etiquette,
Mm-hmm.
where you kind of like, if you know what that specific person is going to play, you kind of just figure what would be the best to complement to what he's going to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've always felt like that's DJ etiquette.
Yeah.
Like I feel like every DJ should know that. And if you don't, then what are you doing? Then you're playing for yourself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like it's DJ etiquette. You don't want to kind of just like it has to make sense with what's happening through the night.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like whatever whoever's, you're opening for example, is playing, So for what I would do is I would just kind of figure out what would complement what he's doing without kind of like trying to like, be better here at all.
Yeah.
Just basically just trying to set the night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Set it to what, you know, what the peak will be, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone's playing Afro house, for example, I would just kind of play like start like house, maybe start percussive, kind of going towards the
Mm-hmm.
percussiveness, towards like building it to when that person goes on. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like that's DJ etiquette, man.
Totally, and you don't want to step on what they're going to be trying to do for themselves either, but
Yeah,
you've got
like
to get it
yeah,
to a point where the handover is, it doesn't feel like there's a big step change. I mean, how have you
exactly.
found that? Obviously, you're so experienced. How have you found that when you've been on the other side of that and you were walking into a club and there are some DJs and that etiquette, does it always exist still in the modern day?
It does, but not all the time. I mean, not all the time, but it does. For the most part, I feel like, you know, I get it. Like from people that opened up for me have kind of been usually people that kind of tend to like my music, and
Hmm.
which kind of makes sense, you know what I mean? But I mean, I don't know. You still get every once in a while, you get someone that, without etiquette. You got to learn the etiquette. You got to like, I don't know. I've always like felt like getting it anything I ever got into, I always wanted to learn everything about it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I feel like it's important. You know what I mean? If you're a painter, don't you want to know who the best painters are? Who's before you?
Hmm.
Who's the reason why you're doing what you do? Who inspired you? I want to know everything about that person. For
Hmm.
me, it was when I started DJing. I wanted to know everything about Paradise Garage, about Chicago, about like, Ron Hardy, all these guys that are like, wow, like now I like listen, I try to find their mixes, because it's just, that's school 101. That's like
Yeah.
history. Know the history of whatever it is you're doing.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So it's just
absolutely.
that goes, the reason I'm bringing that up is because, you're asking about like etiquette and like
Hmm.
and all that. Then it's just kind of know the history of, if you're opening up for somebody, know what this person's about, know what they're doing, it's part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes you don't do that.
Yeah, and I mean, this what this podcast is all about. We're talking to people and just like peeling back the layers of that history and making sure that it's documented and people are telling their own experiences through it. We've had some amazing conversations over it. You're going to be episode 60, so
Wow.
it's we've done quite a few. Yeah, I mean, so in terms of like where you were back in like that era of the mid 90s and then moving forward, like where did like the touring start coming and where did you feel like you're actually making inroads into becoming known outside of the US or outside of New York?
So basically, it was okay. I'm 17. It's like it's like now I'm 18. Now it's like beginning of the 90s. I started playing, and I got this residency with the Roxy, and I just kind of like now I'm known here in New York,
Mm-hmm.
only New York.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm like killing it here. Like, all right, this is now it's like a point where we're killing it. The Roxy's killing it. After Hours is killing it. Packed. And around 97, 98, things start shifting. I
Mm-hmm.
noticed. I noticed that all these producers are starting to get booked. And I saw it. I saw the shift from like beginning with when we started doing the Roxy to like all of a sudden these guys that have made big records are getting booked. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh shit, they were DJs, they're ill producers. I didn't know that. But that's what happened. It
Mm-hmm.
just it was a shift where like if you made a dope record, you're people want to hire you as a
Yeah.
DJ,
Yeah.
which I kind of never understood because one thing is a great producer, another thing is a great DJ. They're
Mm-hmm.
two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
One thing is knowing how to rock a dance floor, another thing is knowing how to rock that your equipment in that studio. And so I noticed the shift. So I was like, oh shit, I need to start making some records.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what got me into production. It's so funny because I started making records so I can keep DJing. So it's so ironic because and then I ended up loving production. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I got into production because I was never really interested in production. I was just so into like connecting with a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just kind of like I noticed that everybody, these guys started getting booked as DJs. So I was like, oh shit, I got to start making some records. And I started kind of dabbling into that world, and that's what set me off into making records. I think I made my first record in '97
Mm-hmm.
in Germany. I did it. I met some kids from Germany. I went to Munich. I remember I stayed out in Munich, and I worked with this kid Jerome actually. This kid and yeah, I made my first record in his studio. He had a great studio over there,
Mm-hmm.
and that set off my production world. And that kind of started where I started dabbling. I started kind of putting together a little studio.
Mm-hmm.
And at those times, you have to understand those times, to have a studio was not cheap. Now you have a laptop, there's a studio. But like
Yeah.
back then, it was expensive. I
Mm-hmm.
remember everything. When I built my first studio, I had one sampler that was like 4 grand. Now your computer, you can sample anything with your computer. Back then it was in a little tiny screen like this that I had to edit with a jog wheel. I don't miss that shit, bro. Back because now I can, I have like this huge screen. I can edit it and everything's so easy to edit a sample. Back then I was like this on a little screen with a jog wheel. So it's just like I remember I said it was that I had that a synthesizer, which was like almost 3 grand, and a drum machine, and all this stuff was expensive, man. So it took me a while to put that together.
Yeah.
And when I finally had a decent little studio set up, I just got in it, man.
Yeah. And like,
I started doing it.
how did you learn? Were you all self-taught? I mean, like there was like no YouTube
Self-taught,
really,
man.
you
And I
know.
had a few friends that helped. That I have friends that I've always that I call them tech support because they were just like always help me out. This one guy, Michael Mandel. We used to call him MIDI Mike. And any MIDI questions, I would always be like, Mike, help me out, bro. What do I do? Because I
Yeah.
was always having MIDI issues.
Yeah.
And but for the most part, I pretty much self-taught, man. I learned, and I'm stubborn too. I'm like, I can't sit there and start reading manuals, so I just trial and error
Yeah. You learn through
thing.
doing,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. Just and that's kind of how like just the wanting to do it. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I learned pretty quick, and like I had people helping me, like I said, my friend Michael Mandel, he was a big part of helping me,
Yeah.
like as far as in the production, because this guy is like so good at that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I kind of just got into that whole world, and I started kind of getting little recognition and stuff. But then I had one record that set it off for me.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of just because you asked about the whole when did I get into the whole international scale?
Yeah.
That one record set my whole international career. It's a record I did.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I tell the story of the record. I did this record called "Hold On to Your Love,"
Mm-hmm.
right? Vocal track in '91, I believe.
Mm.
And I was on a gig in St. Louis, and I had made this record 2 years prior, and I would just play it from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
It was an instrumental, and I met this kind of R&B singer, this kid Troy Dillard in St. Louis at some party,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "Hey man, I'm a singer, I'd love to like get together with you and this and that." And it just so happened that like he was just like, "Hey, we're doing this little jam at after hours at our house if you want to come through." And I never do that back then. I was just like, I was very selective where I went. I was just like, "All right, fuck it, I'll go hang out. I've never been here. This I had my first time over there."
Mm-hmm.
And I met him, and he was at the party, and he was just singing like freestyling. And I was like, "Oh shit, this guy can sing."
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I was just like, "Yo," I played him that one of the instrumentals that I had at that time. I used to walk around with a little DAT machine. It's
Yeah.
digital audio tape.
Yeah.
That's before CDs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would record stuff on the road and whatever to sample. So I was like, I had my little DAT man with me, and I was like, "Hey, why don't we just record a scratch and then we'll like somehow figure it out and record it proper."
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, "All right." So I remember I had my little DAT machine. We played it on a tape we were in some living room, and he recorded, and I plugged in my headphones into the mic jack of the DAT,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
sang basically through my headphones.
Uh-huh.
And that's how "Hold On to Your Love" happened.
No way.
He wrote that song it was like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
He wrote the lyrics to that song that morning. And then I recorded it like that. Then I went back to New York. I put it in the studio, and like I put it together, and it sounded cool. I mean, it sounded like shitty because he recorded through a mic through a headphone. For some reason, it had this like weird quality.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
people try to emulate that sound now. You know what I mean? They think, "Yo, what plugin did you run that through?" I'm like, "Plugin? We didn't have any plugins. This was like some headphone. It sounded like I thought it sounded like shit at the time."
Yeah.
And it just this weird quality of like people put effects on shit now to make it sound like that. It's so funny. And so it was just kind of like, so then I sat on that record and I would play it, and I noticed the crowd it would respond well.
Mm.
And I sat on that record for like years, I remember. And I was just like, I didn't know what to do with it. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna put it out. And I remember this other DJ at the time, Onions,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
he was like, "Yo, bro, I love that record, man. Can we put it out?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it." And he's just like, "Oh, he really wanted that record." And I was like, "All right, let's do it. Let's put it out." And basically, he's like, "Let's do a remix of the track." So, for a package deal. So we did a
Mm-hmm.
remix of the track, and he put the record on his label. He put the record out though, as a collaboration when it really wasn't. But he basically, that record went on. It's so ironic because that record went on to establish my career.
Yeah, yeah. And you've been sat on it for so long.
Man, yeah, that record. I got two world tours off that record,
Gee.
literally. Like this, like through Europe and through the West Coast.
Uh-huh. Taking that plunge it for spotting that angle of being like, right, I need to produce my own stuff, and then taking that plunge to do it, and then that opening the next door to your career. That's like, that's great, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm happy I did because I feel like that was the universe kind of being like, okay, this is next.
Yeah.
I can always embrace change and embrace things because I feel like you know it's something new. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just like that's why with music, I look. That's kind of like my perspective. That's why I just like I like to go everywhere. Sometimes people are like, yo, why you make so many different sounds? It confuses people. I'm like, man, I love all types of music. So I get bored if I have to sit here and just make all tribal or Afro records.
Yeah.
I want to make some dark shit. I want to make some techno. I want to make vocal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I like
Mm-hmm.
it all. So,
Yeah, and you're always working as well. Like, it's there's
oh
loads of
man, I
like.
work out. I'm in there. I mean, because that's who I am. It's part
Mhm.
of my life, and it makes me happy. You know what I mean? Like for me, like people are like, yo, why don't you take a vacation? Like I'll go out and take a vacation, but when I'm laying on the beach, I'm like, fuck, man, I got this idea, man. I wish I was a studio. I could lay down.
Yeah, you find it tough to. I can imagine you find it tough to sit still and quiet your mind and just be like, no, you're always thinking.
It's a curse and a blessing. You know what I mean? It really is because it's just
Yeah.
like it's always on my mind, and it's like it's great because I'm creative and I'm doing all this cool stuff, but then it's just like curse when I'm sitting there watching a movie with somebody. And I'm like, stop that, pause that, rewind it. And they're like, what the fuck? Can we just watch the movie here? Why does everything have to be about music? I'm like trying to sample stuff. I'm trying to like, Shazam stuff.
Amazing, and so obviously you had the big track. You've been sat on it for ages, and then in 2001, you started at Mayer Recordings, your own label. What was the kind of feeling behind that? Why was that time right then? What did you want to achieve with it? And what was behind the name and all that type of stuff and the vibe you're trying to imprint?
Yeah. The whole objective with the label for me, it was always because I wanted a home for my music because I
Mm-hmm.
make so much music. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So it's just like I wanted somewhere where I could just put out anything I wanted and I wouldn't have to hear anything from anybody like, oh, that's not gonna fit, that's not gonna sell, none of that shit. It was just kind of like I wanted a home for it,
Mm-hmm.
for everything that I wanted to put out. So, I mean, in retrospect, maybe if I had approached the label a little differently, it'd probably be a bigger brand. But for me, it was always kind of like my, home for my music. It wasn't like I wanted to blow up this brand and
Yeah.
huge. That
Mm-hmm.
was never the objective. The objective was a home for my music,
Yeah.
which is why 90% of the releases are mine on there. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like so that was the whole concept of the label was somewhere I can just showcase all my music. And I had a daughter, my daughter in 1999, Maya,
Mm-hmm.
which I named the label after her because I've always been fascinated with Mayan culture, and I always thought it was so cool. And I named it after her. So Maya Records comes from her. People are like, oh, I mean, obviously the Mayan culture is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it was to like, commemorate her. I just had my, my first kid.
Oh man, that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, we have a good relationship. She lives here in Brooklyn as well.
Mm-hmm. And so that create. You say a lot of the output is your own stuff. In terms of your creative process, where is your studio now? I mean, where are you right now? How close is your studio to your home? Is that a good or bad thing at being close or further away or what?
My studio is across the street, literally like 50 feet from my building.
Uh-huh.
I live in this amazing space. This building is over 100 years old.
Hmm.
It's all musicians and artists in this building. It's like a little like it's like this old factory building that's all like creatives pretty much living in here,
Yeah.
which is why I live here. It's like I said, it's the universe put me here,
Hmm.
which is for me to just keep growing. Because ever since I've been here, I've just kept growing. Because it's just since I've moved here, it's just my life has just changed for the better. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, just being here, my boy next door, this guy Tariq Khan, he's an insane producer,
Hmm.
works with like the Roots, with like all these amazing people,
Hmm.
and all these people since I've been living here. have been pivotal for me just to move forward on the whole production. And because since I've been here, I've stepped up my studio is, and I've stuff that I've learned from them and working with these amazing producers and engineers that work with all these big greats,
Yeah.
that live here and like work here is been, pivotal for me. Amazing.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I live in this loft space and my studio is across the street in this other building that's just all musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. So I
Yeah.
have access to so many musicians, which is like for me, it's invaluable.
Yeah, and I mean that's great. And so when you're thinking about collaborating or you need someone to do something live for you or a vocalist or something like that, how do you work in the studio? Do you find it a solo affair for your own good, or do you like to collaborate? Do you want to do it virtually? Do you want to get people live in the studio? How does that work?
Both, both. I mean, I love to collaborate because collaborating, you just bring something else to the table. It's two different minds, two different perspectives, which is always is great.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I love collaborating, yeah, but I also love solo. I mean, I love working alone. You know what I mean? I like to kind of because I work in a specific way where it's like efficiently. I like to work efficient. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of like to keep moving. I don't like to get stuck on certain things. And that can play a that can if you're collaborating with somebody that can kind of it depends on who because I work with Harry Romero and he's like we're like beasts in there. Like
Yeah.
we get in the studio, we I'll go to his house and he has a studio at home, and I'll leave there in like one day we've made three tracks front to back, mixed and everything. Because his workflow is like mine. We work
Yeah.
really efficient.
Yeah.
And but I love to work with musicians, you know what I mean? Because that's so inspiring. These are different. And like usually I work with a lot of like jazz musicians and neo soul musicians, which is great because it's really inspiring what they're bringing, what their perspective
Mm-hmm.
is on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I love all like I love that. And since I've been here, I've been able to work with a lot of musicians, which has been a blessing
Yeah.
because it's inspiring. What some of these people are so talented, man.
Yeah, a different perspective, like you say, and so you work efficiently. We have done an interview with Harry as well on this podcast as well, and I get that sense that yeah, he was
Yeah,
exactly the
Harry's a
same,
beast in the studio. Yeah,
absolute
yeah.
beast. And how do you know when something is finished? Do you have a problem with stopping stuff and being like that's done? Do you like to road test stuff and then take it back and tweak it? Like how does
I
that
road
work?
test it. I
Uh huh.
road test mix it mainly on my mix downs, where I'll mix it and then I'll take it out and road test and be like, oh, maybe, bring the vocal up a couple of dBs, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Bass, whatever, fine tune the bass. But for the most part, I feel like it has to do with confidence, man.
Mm-hmm.
Is knowing that, this shit sounds good, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
believe it sounds good and it's done, you know what I mean? That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it has a lot to do with that because, it's like an artist. Like no work's ever done, but you're confident enough to know that it's good and it's worthy of being done.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you want to make a few little changes to it because I'm always constantly making little changes and stuff. But it's knowing that it sounds good and it's ready. That has to do, I feel, with confidence.
Yeah, yeah. Is there ever like a disappointing bit where you absolutely are confident in something and then it just hasn't worked for whatever
Oh
reason?
yeah, yeah, of
Yeah.
course, it's happened. It's happened, and it's happened with a mix.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I've moved studios or where I just kind of just get learning, because every room is different, and like learning the room, I've learned where I've done mixes where I'm like, ooh, this could be so much better, and it's just like that usually happens to me when I'm just learning a new room that I've just moved in or I've just bought new monitors and everything takes getting used to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just like for me, yeah, that's been times where I've heard like, oh man, that bass sounds terrible. I need to revisit that. But I mean, yeah, but that's kind of been because of, like I moved my studio and like
Mm.
like I said, and I wasn't used to the room and I thought the mix sounded right, but when I took it and played it out, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so what would you say if someone asked you? Well, I'm going to ask you to describe like your sound. like encapsulate it, not necessarily in like, pigeonholed in like, tribal house or, tech house or whatever. If you like, what's most personal to you in terms of what vibe and the soul that you're looking to put into your sound? Well, how would you
For
describe
me,
it?
it's always been like the deeper stuff,
Hmm.
the really kind of like not so much melodic, but just more psychedelic, like very delayed effect. I love reggae dub music.
Uh huh.
Huge
Yeah.
fan of dub because I've always loved that whole tape delayed dub vibe. I've always thought it was so cool.
Hmm.
So I mean, I incorporate that shit in all of my music. So I would say it's Latin influence, darker techno. Then it's I can't say because it's just so many types of music I love and so many types of music I make.
Hmm.
So I make all types of stuff. Like just for example, this week I made two vocal tracks. I made a darker techno track. And then I made like this other Afro track. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's kind of like I love all that. So
Hmm.
whatever I go when I'm in the studio and whatever I'm feeling, and then I do Latin stuff too. You know what I mean? I love making a lot of like Latin influence stuff, like straight up horns and everything.
Yeah, so I did read somewhere that you were thinking about maybe an album for 2024. Is that on
Oh
the
yeah,
agenda?
I've been working on that for a while. Yeah, we got something in the process, doing an album for Damian Lazarus for Crosstown Rebels.
Uh huh.
I love Damien. I love the stuff that I've been. I sent him like usually the stuff I put out on Crosstown is more kind of reggae dubby type of stuff. So this album is gonna be across the board, all everything like that I love. You know what I mean? For me, and even for, like slower stuff like down more like 120 BPMs. Kind of I'm experimenting on this, just going everywhere. Everything I love, and yeah, super excited for this album. I've been working on it for a while. I'm still working on it.
When you say wow, I mean, do you think 2024 is ambitious when you're saying it like
No,
that?
no,
Or?
it's done. I'm there. I'm there, but I'm just finalizing. It's more so what tracks that we're gonna go with. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
I have so much stuff, man. I just, like, I work so much. You know what I mean? I'm in the studio constantly. It's crazy. Sometimes I'm like, damn, I make like 9 tracks in a week, 10 tracks in a week. It's just like,
That's insane.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah. Because it's just it's what I enjoy doing, and
Mm.
this is what I want to do. I wake up and I work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really see it like work. I'm seeing like, I'm in there having fun,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so my work is, you know, man, I have a drive with over 100 unreleased tracks and I have to figure out what I'm gonna do. Like place them out of my label and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and those unreleased ones, are those ones that when you're playing out, you're playing the majority of your own
I
stuff,
play
and
some
you're,
I play
uh-huh.
some of them, yeah. I did an all unreleased set on Mixmag Live once. And it's just all every just I did a set of all my unreleased music at the time.
And what was the reaction like? Were people clamoring for
That was
stuff on the
great.
back of that? Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool because it was just some edits I've done, some bootlegs,
Hmm.
and a bunch of unreleased stuff. Yeah, it was cool. I should do that more often, actually.
Well, you got the selection to do it by the
I
sounds of
have
it.
the selection very much, before I put them out. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, so what else have you got kind of going on like right now? What are you excited about? Are you looking? Is 2023 over for you? Are you looking forward to the next year? Have you got any tours planned? Are you going to Ibiza or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm excited for what the future brings. I mean, this album I'm excited for.
Hmm.
There's just really cool stuff happening. Like, some really solid releases on Maya, some really good stuff coming out, some collaborations that I've done.
Hmm.
Setting off the year, I'm doing Goa, India for New Year's.
Oh
I'm looking
wow.
forward to
Have you
that.
been there before?
Oh, my first time in India. It's definitely
Oh
my bucket
wow.
list of
Yeah.
countries. And so I'm really excited about that. Then we're doing South America for January. I got finally got my cover for Mixed Mag Brazil.
Oh,
My first cover in like
congratulations.
so we're doing like a tour to set that off for January in Brazil and South America.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm doing Tulum for
Yep.
Day Zero.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But just a lot of good stuff. Usually January and February has always kind of been more of South America for me
Yeah.
because that's the best time over there. So
Yeah.
I usually work a lot during over there. And in the summers, Europe for sure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
We got a busy schedule coming up. So I'm really looking forward to everything. And just, pushing the label forward to where where I have some people now handling the label because it's just too much. You know what I mean with my
Yeah.
schedule. And
Yeah.
I had a good friend of mine. He handled all the label stuff, and now that I was doing it myself, it kind of wasn't really getting handled the way it should. So now he's back at it, and we're moving full steam.
Yeah, I mean, you're a busy guy, right? So, and like, look, you're always looking forward. You're always pushing your sound forward as well. When you're
Yeah.
on tour and you go to certain places, you mentioned Goa, bucket list. You've not been there before. Are you always looking for new places that to new experiences and new places
Oh
to
yeah,
play, or
absolutely.
do you like to go back and be like, I love playing in this one particular place as well. I'm happy to always go back there.
I'm always excited for somewhere I've never been because I don't
Hmm.
know what to expect. You know what I mean? And India is like, amazing country,
Yeah,
such
yeah.
cool. So, and I've heard so, I mean, Goa, I heard is beautiful. I've never been over there. So like all my friends that have been there, oh, you're gonna love it. Have fun. Don't drink the water.
Yeah, no, don't drink the water.
It's not. So I'm excited. And I love traveling and
Hmm.
like learning new cultures. So that's always been a big bonus of like traveling abroad
Hmm.
is that I've gotten able to do that, try the foods but yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited to go over there, and it's New Year, so it's a special night to play over there. It's anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when you're playing a gig like that, do you know what you're going to play at, like if you're playing over midnight, like what tunes you're going to drop in there, anything like that?
I
Anything
don't
in the
even
back of your
know yet.
mind? No
I mean,
idea.
I'm starting to think about it. I know I feel like I like to play what I feel like is appropriate for where I'm at.
Hmm.
You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like setting wise. I feel like if I'm playing on a beach, I want to play a little bit more organic stuff. You know what I mean? Which makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just, but I don't know. I'm definitely I'm gonna just do me. But I mean, for sure, I feel like I'm gonna go a little bit more percussive and stuff out here because it makes sense.
Hmm.
If I'm playing, say, on this beach, it's just like it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be stunning. So, I mean, we're talking about tunes, and it's kind of the time in the interview to talk about your tunes and track selections for our House Culture Perfect playlist, which is on Spotify. And yeah, we've been doing this since the first episode. Every single guest has submitted 5 tracks based on different themes for this playlist. So it's over 30 hours long now, I think, to be honest with you. And there's some.
Congratulations, man! You guys episode 60.
I
Damn.
know I can't believe it either, to be honest. When we started off the episode numbers and we did 001, I was like, why don't we just put 01? It's being massively ambitious. But yeah, we're getting there, so it's good fun. And yeah, and obviously you're
Really cool
part of
what you
that
guys
now.
are doing. I
Yeah.
think it's really cool what you guys are doing because you're basically, you're educating the masses because it's just like, in this business that's grown so much, I feel like it's really important to know the roots of it, the people that were there before you. So
Yeah.
I commend you guys on that.
Cool, thank you. No, I really appreciate that, and that's it. Yeah, that's exactly what we're all about. To be honest with you, it's just all about us having this passion for this scene and watching it grow and looking back. I've got my own experience through the scene, and like the other people that we do this house culture thing with, they've got their own experiences, and we're all completely different, and we're all so interested in like how each one has like got to where we are now. It's yeah, and speaking to other people about their journeys is always super interesting. But yeah, so in terms of the Spotify playlist, the tracks, we always start off with a catalyst track, a track that kind of got you into
And
dance
I mean,
music,
that was a
electronic
tough
music.
question for me because there was so many. But this one, there's like records that just, whenever I walk into the studio, always are in the back of my head,
Hmm.
which is like the one I wrote, which is the Blake Baxter
Yeah,
when we used to play in that record. I still love that record. And it's just, there's certain records like that, Little Louis French Kiss. These records are just like timeless.
yeah, yeah.
It's, they were so ahead of their time.
Yeah, so Blake
But
Baxter, when we used to play, I mean, yeah, you can,
yeah,
and like you say, Little Louis as well, you can still play these out now and you can still hear them
oh
out now
yeah.
and they still sound fantastic. I mean,
AMS, I mean, Kevin Saunderson, those guys, look what they've done. That label is amazing. I mean, techno is just Detroit techno is
yeah.
finest.
So, I mean, where were you when you first heard that and what was your reaction to
Man,
it?
I remember I was at this club called the Saint
So, the Saint is the one with the dome,
in the
right?
Sphere.
Yeah.
It was in the Sphere.
Uh huh.
So it's like it looked like you're in like a planetarium when you walked in, and it was just like it was what a club,
I've
man. I
just seen
remember.
photos of it. It looks
Yeah,
sensational.
yeah.
Yeah.
This was in the 80s. God, I'm old. This is in the late 80s,
Uh
yeah.
huh.
And I remember like I used to go there. It was like there was this gay club because at that time the best clubs in New York were the gay scene.
Yeah.
And I remember I used to go there and I heard that record and it was just the bass line was just everything to me when I
Mm-hmm.
first heard it. And I was just like, oh my God, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just going because he played it as a promo. I hadn't come out and I was going crazy. Things are a lot different. Things back then, try to find the record that a DJ played, good luck. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
the one that goes ding, 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 ding. Now you just Shazam, boom. It's just
Yeah.
everything's out there on some podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Even trying to hear it on someone's mixes was impossible. How was I going to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember, I heard it and I was just like, and then he played it like a bunch of times when I forgot who was DJing.
Mm.
It could have been David Morales if I'm not
No
mistaken.
way.
Yeah, because David was like he used to play some really
Yeah.
cool stuff back then.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do the Red Zone. I think he used to play it too.
Mm-hmm.
The Red Zone in New York, that was
Yeah.
oh man, that was school for me too.
Yeah.
And David Morales used to kill that room.
Oh,
Wow.
I mean, we've spoken to David Morales on this
Wow,
podcast as well.
man.
I say we've spoken to him. I just asked him one question, and I think he spoke for an hour. It was absolutely brilliant.
Bro, he was just like that was school for me. I remember I used to go to the Red Zone all the time, and that was his home.
Uh huh.
And he would experiment there. He would just play just really trippy. He's just it's so good, man.
Yeah.
Inspiring.
Yeah. Completely. So, the next choice is the floor filler, and this
Yeah.
is the one that I'm sure everyone knows from yourself.
For me, this one, this was like I think my biggest record in the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
Like where I was surprised that the people responded so well to it because it's kind of like it's more of a Latin. You kind of it's a Latin sample, it's a salsa sample, so it's kind of like it's not everybody's into salsa
Yeah.
music, so it's just I was surprised how big because this record ended up like I've heard like techno guys play it, house guys play it, Afro guys, everybody played it,
Yeah.
and it was my record that just worked. So whenever
Yeah.
I feel like I need a little energy burst, I just drop it and it always works. The breakdown is just it just works for me. Like the energy shifts. It's always just a good energy record for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's called Dia de Aya. Am I mangling that,
Yeah,
or is that?
yeah. It's feature Hector Lavoe. That's another thing. Hector Lavoe is like one of the legendary salsa singers from
Yeah.
the '70s. And my mom used to listen to that record when she was cleaning the house in like in the '80s,
Wow.
and I sampled him from that, and
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
genius because I remember I was just like, "There's no way I'm going to clear this sample because this is from Fania, who owns the rights to them." And I remember, I remember, it's like, how am I going to release this record? I was just like, I can't release it because I contacted them and they wanted all this crazy money to
Yeah.
license it.
Yeah.
And I was remember thinking like, damn, I guess I'm just going to be playing it. And then the late Eric Murillo, rest in peace,
Mm-hmm.
it's that brother. Him, he heard it. He's like, Joe, this record is the shit. Well, I'm putting this out. I'm like, well, we have to license it. Funny, for him, that was like
Yeah.
10 G's here, no problem. You know what I mean? And he licensed it, and we were able to put it out on his label, Sondos.
It's on us. Yeah.
And it's great because I got to have my name. That was like my goal was to have my name next to his
Mm-hmm.
for me to show that to my mom, and she was so happy.
Oh, that's so good. That's so cool. Amazing. So, a sunsetter. You're talking about like obviously playing on a beach and thinking forward to that time in India that you're gonna have. What have you chosen for your sunsetter?
Yeah, thanks, bro. I haven't even like thought about it, but like this for me, a sunset song has to be something beautiful. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Something beautiful, the motion. That's why I chose the because Damaz, this Brazilian producer that's kind of killing it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm loving what he's doing, and that's one of my favorite remixes he's done.
Mm-hmm.
So I've played that record plenty sunsets before.
Yeah. So it's Zika Veloso.
That's a Brazilian artist, yeah, and he remixed it, and he did like this great like remix of it.
Yeah.
I've been really following his stuff and really vibing on what he's doing.
Cool. It's a great choice. Okay. Okay. So a tearjerker.
Get you okay.
These are the
Anything
mad
emotional?
choices that we get, but sometimes people go completely left field. Some people choose something from like dance music or whatever. What you've chosen the Ananda project, Cascades of Color, that
Yeah,
Joe
man. That
Clausel.
record.
Sacred
Man, it
Rhythm
brings back
mix.
good memories for me,
Hmm.
and it's just a beautiful record. The vocal is just amazing, like really touching. And Joe Clausel's remix is beautiful, beautiful. So it's just one of those records that for me, it makes me emotional. So that's why I chose that as a tearjerker. Makes me jerk a few tears.
So yeah, are you a fan of playing it out or anything like that, or is it
Oh, I played it out a bunch of times.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I played that record out a bunch of times. Yeah, it's like it's one of those things, like I feel like every record, every track, every song has a time and a place where it shines. You know what I mean? Because it could like shine in one place and annihilate a dance floor on another, or just clear a floor on another one. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? So every record has its time where it'll shine. A record like that will shine at sunrise for the right crowd. Everybody's feeling amazing, and
Yeah.
something like that, it'd be really special. But then, you played at the wrong time. People be like, "What is this? It sucks."
Well, I mean, and that's the style of a decent DJ, understanding which
Yeah.
moment
Knowing
when.
when to play what and what to play. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's DJing 101.
Cool. All right. So last tune, you alluded to this tune with your residency at
That was a
Together.
hard one for me too, because there's so many that I used to close with that I loved.
Yeah.
But this one of them, I did an edit, and I put the original version on this one because it's Spotify.
Yep.
Because I did an edit of it. That was the one I used to play, but it's not on Spotify. So that's why I was like, man, what do I do? So I'm like, let me just throw the original.
Uh
I
huh.
did an edit like from like the middle on,
Hmm.
and it's just that record just killed,
Uh huh.
and it was just like the crowd would sing it. It's just magic.
Yeah, Love
Yeah.
Committee, Just As Long As I Got You. And that, yeah, I mean, a lot of my journey through house music, dance music is hearing something that sampled that first and then going
Yeah. Oh
back
yeah.
and
Yeah.
discovering the original. And that was Seamus Haji, Big Bang
Yes.
Theory did God's
Yeah,
Child. And
man.
that's, yeah,
Okay.
always for
That's
me
talking
is
original.
The God's Child one. Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. I love it. I love all the stuff he used to do, man. Some of them
mhm.
big.
Yeah. But no, the original, when you go back and you discover those originals and you're like, holy shit, these are absolutely
Yeah.
amazing.
That's where that comes from.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Everything comes from something, you know what I mean? Even if it's an inspiration,
Yeah.
even if it's something original, it comes from someone like thinking of something that they loved, and that inspiring that.
Hmm. Hmm. So when you were like, had that residency and you were playing these tunes, was there an expectation that you would play this one or that
Oh
one or
yeah. Oh
whatever?
yeah. Oh
Hmm.
yeah. People knew these are the records that I would play towards the end.
Yeah.
Like that one, it was Together by Merck.
Hmm.
Merck Brothers. That was like a just specific, sometimes Reach for Me by Merck.
Yeah.
The records that people like I would play at the end, and people knew. Oh, we would sing them. It's so nice.
I love that. It's amazing. Right, I mean
Yeah.
that's the end. We've got one more question. We always have our final question, which is we are house culture. We've kind of talked about why we exist and what we're doing for the scene, and trying to educate people and peel back those layers of, the history of it all. Like for you, what does house culture mean?
Man, it's for me, it's just happiness. It's who I am. It's what I've been able to do. I mean, it's what my life has been. You know what I mean? I can honestly say that my life has been this
Hmm.
my whole life. You know what I mean? And I feel so grateful, so much gratitude that, I can just, and all the friends that I've met along the way doing this, promoters that I've worked with that work like family now. You know what I mean? It's so I feel, it's everything to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, as you see, my life is, I'm in it. What I mean? I wake up, I'm in the studio every day. Weekends, I'm out of town. So I'm in it. You know what I mean? So it's everything to me, man. I feel very grateful that I can still be here doing it, and I'll do it till I can't do it anymore.
Let's end there. That's a brilliant thought to end on. Thank you so much. It's been great to chat to you.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It's really nice chatting with you, bro. Cheers, brother. Take care, man.
House culture.
Now, that was a real nice chat, wasn't it? I hope you all learned something from that. I know I certainly did. So I loved hearing that story about how it was someone else's obsession with his sister that set Joeski on his journey through dance music. I also want to thank him for gracing our 60th episode and for the kind words he had to say about what we're doing on the podcast. Thanks, Joeski. Now, dear listener, if you want to show your support for the podcast as well and get directly involved in what we do, you can come and attend our very first House Culture event happening in February 2024. It's called The Social. It's happening in South London. DJs include myself and Defected and Glitterbox star Katie Goodman, and you can buy tickets from the links pinned on our Instagram page. All proceeds will go to pushing the podcast forward in 2024 and beyond, so please show your support and come and party with House Culture. Some tunes you might hear on the night can be found in amongst our House Culture Perfect playlist on Spotify, that curated collection of tracks chosen by our previous podcast guests. Just search for House Culture Perfect playlist, stick it on shuffle and pump up that volume. Whilst you're on Spotify, you can also now drop us a comment in the Q&A section under the episode description, or if you're on Apple, you can always leave us a review. Feedback is the lifeblood of this show. It makes what we do worthwhile. Share your positive thoughts and we'll shout you out in a future episode. That special shout out this time goes to Darren Williams, who, after listening to our chat with Todd Terry, said that it was a fantastic episode and that he loved listening to an absolute hero of his. Thank you, Darren. I think Todd is a hero to us all, right? Or maybe just a god. On that somewhat heavenly note, I'd like to say thanks once again for all of your support across this fourth season of the House Culture podcast. We will be back with season 5 in 2024, but in the meantime, you can get your fix for all things house from our Instagram at HouseCultureNet, or by following the hashtag #TrueHouseCulture. And don't forget that you can also reach out to me directly on Instagram at DJ Matt Rouse. Thanks for listening. Rave safe. See you in 2024.
House Culture.